I'd like to call this meeting to order. This, I think it's our, do I need to turn on my speaker or are we good here? There's nobody here, so.
Yeah, the recording would be.
All right, I'll turn on over there. That sounds better. So this is our third meeting of the San Clemente Coastal Advisory Committee. Our first meeting was in January, the second meeting was in March, and this is our main meeting. So I'd like to call to order this meeting. And the first thing we're going to do is do the Pledge of Allegiance. So I guess we will rise and face the flag. And would somebody like to start the Pledge of Allegiance for us?
Sure, I will.
Thank you.
Ready, here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Aaron. And at this time, we'll do the roll call. I am present. Brian Jacobs. Matt.
Present. Oh, wait, hold on. Present.
Aaron Washington.
Present.
John Dow.
Present.
John Delegowski.
Present.
And Susan Ambrose.
Present.
Okay. We have a quorum, so we may begin. The approval of the minutes of our last meeting, which are attached to the agenda. I will,
Hey, I have a comment on that too.
I'm sorry, do we have any comments on the meeting minutes from March the 21st?
Yes, if I can find that page, please.
It's attached to the agenda.
And here it is on page 4.
Okay.
There's a statement here that says, Member Ambrose moved to appoint herself to the Sand Acquisition Subcommittee. The motion died due to a lack of a second. I recall this, and I did not make a motion to appoint myself. I made a motion that I wanted to volunteer again to the Sand Acquisition Subcommittee. And then there was this big frou-for-all of all of you in the upper levels there, and some council members talking about how would we do that. And you said you had to make a motion to let me go backwards. And suddenly I see this on minutes. So, and then by that time, it was decided that I wouldn't go back, that you were looking for John to get back, and probably he would take that seat. So I'm asking you to strike that sentence completely.
Okay, do we have any discussion on that?
No, I'll second. Yeah.
We have a motion to strike that.
I'll make a motion to strike it.
Okay, do we have a second?
Well, I thought I just made that motion.
Oh, I did.
Oh, you made a
That's why I
motion?
said second.
Yeah.
Okay, so Susan makes the motion to strike the comment regarding that called out on page 4, Aaron Washington second. Any other further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. And Aaron, did you have a comment that you'd like to make?
Yes, I just want to publicly apologize to Susan. The very first meeting that we had, she had made a comment, and we've talked since then. When she was asking me my experience, when she known me so long, and I got offended by it, and I said I didn't want to work with her. Well, I do want to work with her, Susan. I still love you. Okay.
Thank you
And
very much.
I just want, and I work with you on any team. I just want to publicly tell you I'm sorry, and that's it. And I won't be able to be here. I came here today just to make sure we had a forum because I paid for. I'm with the Pier Pride Board of Directors, and we got this harbor thing going. And I paid for it already, but I was going to cancel it if we didn't have a forum and be here. But as long as I leave and we still have a forum, then I will go on and make my appointment down there.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
See, we're a good civilized committee here. So most usually when things go wrong, it's just a misunderstanding. So I'm really, really proud of this group for talking to each other. Okay, you have a hard stop at what time?
4:30.
Okay, so
Nice.
Aaron will be
Get it all
starting at
done.
4:30. We'll see how far we can go with your participation. Okay, and so we made a motion to make the changes to the minutes, and that was approved, and so now we need a motion to approve the minutes. Okay, so I'd like to do, like a motion to approve the minutes if there's no further discussion.
Sure, motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, and we have a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, and that made a motion, Susan makes the second, so meeting minutes from March the 21st are approved. Thank you very much. Our next item 2 on the agenda is a special presentation from Leslie Meinhoff. So, Leslie, thank you for coming.
Good afternoon. Is this on?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Is your speaker on?
Miley, did you go? There we go.
There you go.
Okay, great. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here with you today, and here to give you a very brief update on the Army Corps Beach Sand Replenishment Project, which if you have been out to the site lately, you will see that it has restarted. Next slide, please. So you'll recall, I'm sure, that the project was stopped in early January of this year because the material being delivered to the city was not beach quality sand. It was cobble. It was not compatible with the beaches. The city sent the Army Corps and the contractor a letter to please stop working until they could bring suitable material to the city. So we spent a couple of months doing some supplemental environmental documentation and permitting. We got that completed, and the contractor, Manson, came back on April 24th. As soon as they finished Solana Beach and Encinitas, they came right back to San Clemente to finish up here. So I'm very pleased to report that. They came back with a somewhat limited timeline, so 25 days. Today is about day 19, so they've got about 6 more days in which they will be completing the first increment of beach quality sand in San Clemente. The target volume right now is 120,000 cubic yards. When they first came back, they were proposing only 92,000 cubic yards, and we worked with them to maximize the sand volume that we can receive now, with the promise that they will come back in mid-October or later to finish the project and deliver the remaining volume of sand that the city has paid for. When they come back in mid-October, we are working very closely right now with OCTA so that they can have their 500,000 cubic yard beach sand project teed up with ours so that the 2 projects are back to back. It's likely that they'll use the same borrow site, which is the Surfside Sunset borrow site, which the city had permitted. Obviously, OCTA has a few tasks in front of them, including environmental and permitting, but we are doing everything we can on the city side to bring them back when the contractor comes back to San Clemente in mid-October. So lots more information on that. Stay tuned. We'll continue to bring details as we have them. Next couple of pictures, next couple of slides are just pictures, courtesy of Miley Stivers and Rod Malott with his drone. Just some great photographs of the beach sand project in action. They shifted this morning to the south side of the pier again, which is where they'll finish up. They are back to a 70-foot wide beach berm, which is the original construction template. And you might notice that they're not going to go as far south as T Street, and they didn't go as far north as Linda Lane. And we can thank the California Grunion for that. As soon as we started placing the sand, the Grunion came back. They loved the beach sand. They laid their eggs in it in the last cycle. And so because of that, we have regulatory restrictions that prevent us from basically placing additional sand on top of the eggs. So the eggs will hatch in about 2 weeks. The contractors will be long gone by then, and our project will be complete for this first phase. That really concludes the presentation, but I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
I'll start the questions off. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was I think I mentioned before the meeting that I was down at the pier and saw them depositing the sand, and it just looks beautiful, beautiful quality sand. One of the questions I had, we're talking about volumes of sand a lot, about, what's being deposited now, what's being deposited later. How are we confirming that we're getting what we're being told in terms of yardage? And are they doing measurements on the volume that's actually placed? Because, once you pump up that material, it's mixed with a lot of water and whatnot, and what you have left over. How are we calculating volume?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the contractor is being paid by the volume of sand placed on the beach. And they come up with a construction template that's based on sections, three-dimensional sections. When they say they have completed a section to, in this case, it was a plus 15 from mean lower low water, 45 feet wide, and I'm not sure what the final length is because of the grinding restrictions, but they have divided the beach into segments, and when they complete the segment, they provide specifications to the Army Corps of Engineers, who then reviews to make sure that they did provide all the sand and can quantify that volume, and then they get a payment for that. So it's really, the burden is on the Army Corps of Engineers and their coastal engineers to go out and verify on the ground that the city has received the sand that is promised.
Okay. All right, so we're taking their word for it,
Well, it's a little bit more than that. I mean, the Army Corps does have surveyors that are actually going out to make sure that the material is there.
Yeah, I actually thought I saw a guy with a GPS station where he was walking around with it, so I assumed that's what the purpose was, so they're verifying that's all. All right, and then my second question is that you're saying that the October event, did you say October 24th, I think it was, October?
Mid-October this year.
Mid-October. And so what's the variable involved with whether or not they're going to meet that goal or not? Is it a permitting issue? Is it their availability, or whether they're on time on the last job, or what might impact that date?
Yeah, again, good questions. As we know from this whole project, there are a lot of variables. Current variables that we are looking at include the Army Corps of Engineers needing to prepare a supplemental EIS, Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement, which will enable them to come back in mid-October, which is when Manson construction is basically free. They have a window of opportunity after they complete some of their maintenance projects for the Portland District. So that's what's dictating that timing. So in addition to the supplemental EIS, we also still have a funding issue on the table where we need additional funding to pay for this increase in cubic yard cost that's related to the fact that the borrow site is, I believe, about 10 miles further each direction. So the per yard cost has gone up, I was told, about 30%. And so that net increase in price is something that we're still trying to offset with additional funding sources.
So those two issues could potentially prevent this from happening?
Potentially, I guess so, and I see that Andy Hall, the city manager, is here. I'm not sure if he has anything additional that he would like to add about the variables, but I can assure you that on our side, we're doing everything we can to make sure that they come back, because this was supposed to be 251,000 cubic yards dredged and 200,000 placed on our beach. So we're going to be about 80,000 short potentially. There's options to maybe make that up through scoop projects, which we'll talk about in my next item. But we're going to do what we can to make sure that they do come back to complete the project.
And then you also said that we're going to try and coordinate that with OCTA's send?
Yes, we've been in conversations with OCTA about coming back or coming to San Clemente to place the sand that they're now proposing as part of their coastal resiliency plan along the tracks in San Clemente. So there's the reinforcement areas 1 and 2 and area 4 on the southern end of the city. They've got volumes of sand they're contemplating right now. They've got their coastal engineers designing those templates. They're working with us on permitting tasks, borrow site information, other information that we have. We're trying to help them so that they can expedite, because it's, they presented 2 timelines. One is about a 6-month timeline, one is about a 2-year timeline. We don't want to wait 2 years to have OCTA deliver the sand. We would like to get it this year.
Yeah, especially with the availability of the barge, the dredge.
Exactly, yes.
Any other questions?
I have a couple questions. Leslie, so they're going to try to piggyback on to our sand when they come back to do the second phase of our sand replenishment.
That is the current plan, yes.
And what do we think is the likelihood that they can make all that happen? I know that you are helping them, but we know how long it took us to get the sand to on our project, and so getting all the permitting in place, being able to actually piggyback time-wise with this project, what do we think the likelihood is that they'll make this happen?
Well, I'm not really a betting woman, but if I were to wager a guess, I would say it's fairly good. The key variable is really the regulatory agencies and how quickly they can respond to applications. That said, we know that the regulatory agencies are very interested in seeing sand delivered, so I believe they will do what they can on their end to expedite so that we can have a project this year.
Okay. Well, I would think everybody would be motivated. So they would then leverage off our project, maybe use the dredge after they're done placing our second phase, and use the same borrow site in all likelihood.
Yes.
And that, you mentioned the cost was 30% more. What do we know is the cost per cubic yard of sand that comes from that sealed Surfside site?
I don't think it's been quantified. It hasn't been fully quantified to my knowledge. And even though I'm saying I think OCTA will likely use the Surfside Sunset Bar site, it's not determined, and that's not within the city's control. So I'm sort of giving you my perspective and some of the conversations we've had with OCTA about using that site, because we know the Oceanside site, which is closer, did not produce beach sand quality material for us, so they're probably not going to look at that. And Surfside Sunset's really the only known quantity proven borrow site.
Andy, got something to add? Can we?
When I backed
The only
into,
thing I would add is that the sand is free. The sand is free. It's getting the sand transported to the city. So it's a little nuance there, but it's not the cost of the
understood. And so if I back into what our cost was for this project, it was about $60 per cubic yard. Is that correct?
If you look at the original cost, yeah, $15,251,000.
So plus 30%
And so
to that.
we add another 30%, we're at $70 a cubic yard-ish. Is that
I'll take your word for it. I don't have a calculator in front of me.
all right? And so they're proposing 500,000 cubic yards in multiple places along our coast that would be outside of where our current project is, correct?
Correct.
And do we know how much would be dedicated to the south end of town and how much to the north end of town?
Yes, in the north end, it's 240,000 cubic yards. That's the current proposal. The southern area of the city is 240 to 300,000 cubic yards. So a total potential maximum of 540,000 cubic yards.
And do I understand correctly that we really only have the dredge potentially for 5 months after when it comes back in October?
That was based on a conversation that we had with Manson Construction directly a couple of weeks ago. They, as you know, have a fleet of dredges, but most of them are not based on the West Coast. So we're, if we have to bring a dredge in from, let's say, the East Coast through the Panama Canal, that adds about $8 to $10 million additional in cost. So the idea is to use the dredge that's already here. It's a much lower cost, and that would be basically the Bayport.
And this would be on OCTA's dime, correct?
Correct.
And how did they come up with 500,000 cubic yards? And is that even doable within that time? I guess if we have another dredge that's dedicated, so we're saying we could potentially have 2 dredges?
No, I think we would have just the one dredge, the Bayport, and it would either do the fills concurrently or back to back.
Okay.
That's the concept right now. How they came up with the volumes? My understanding is that they looked at a 50-foot wide beach, so basically taking our Army Corps template and extrapolating that into their reinforcement areas 1, 2, and 4. On the south side of the city, they're looking at, I think it was up to a 75-foot wide beach fill So again, using the Army Corps template and just expanding that into volume per linear foot, using basically our same parameters of a three-dimensional template.
And what level of input would the city have or any other party have in how that sand gets placed to ensure that it fulfills the objective, which is to provide a sandy beach in front of whatever rock revetment they place, and that it isn't placed in some haphazard way or thoughtless way and just gets washed away with the first big storm. I know a lot went into how we placed our sand, and we do know that our sand in our area generally we're in a shoreline sand retentive area. But if OCTA, I just would not want to see OCTA make this gesture, have it fail, and then fall back to dumping more riprap.
Well, as we do know, the sand will move. There's not any sand retention elements to the OCTA proposal, and the city study that we're working on is still in the preliminary planning stages. So we are counting on the volume of sand and the frequency of the nourishments to be what provides that buffer along the shoreline. And OCTA presumably would be counting on the same thing, to have that sand protect the revetment, to keep the waves from directly hitting the revetment.
So as part of their plan, would they have a follow-on replenishments? Is that?
We have not-
Maintenance program?
We have not heard that, but I would imagine that would be part of it, is some frequency of returning to the city to intermittently add sand to keep that revetment protected.
And just to be, I'm sorry to take up so much time, I just got a couple more questions. Would the specific area be where that hotspot is? Hotspot, I think 4 was the south end of town.
Yes, state park.
And so the southern end of State Park, the northern end of Cypress Shore, is that where the south end concentration would be? And I suspect it would be where there is existing sandy beach as opposed to in front of the rocks where the water already is up against the rocks.
We'll have to defer to the graphics that OCT has provided, which are out there, really in the public domain. The southern area, what they're calling reinforcement area 4, is the southern end of the state beach down to about the public access way at Cypress Shore. I don't have the linear dimensions of that, but that's the area that their own engineers have determined is most at risk and in need of reinforcement.
All right. I think that's all I have for now.
John, any others?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Excuse me. Does OCTA plan on adding additional riprap before they import the new sand?
I don't have an answer to that question. I'm sorry. I don't know what their current plan is in terms of phasing it. I'm not sure if you would put the sand first and then the rock, or put the rock and then the sand.
Yeah.
But I would like to just add that OCTA is going to be back here, I think it's May 30th. They've got another public outreach meeting, and I think these are great questions for OCTA. I'm limited in my ability to respond, obviously, because we're talking about another agency's plans.
Sure, yeah. And my second question is, did Grunion actually lay eggs in the area adjacent to the pier where the new sand was added? Or is the rule that if they lay eggs anywhere in the vicinity, then work has to stop? Or how does that work?
Yes, they actually laid eggs. They did spawn south of the pier and north of the pier. So basically the north and south ends of the project footprint.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have, there's a way to measure the number of Grunion. It's called the Walker scale. Walker scale 1 and 2 are not issues really. You can continue beach sand placement activities. But when you have a 3 or a 4, it basically means that you have to create a 30-foot buffer around wherever they are spawning. And we have monitors that went out and did all this work and mapped all of this. And so we know exactly where they were, and those areas basically become no touch. And because there were so many concentric 30-foot buffers, it basically precluded the dredger from going any further north and any further south.
Okay. And it sounds like the limitations on the amount of work that can be done now is the availability of the dredger, but I've been over to the pier probably like 3 times in the last week, and every time the bulldozers were pushing the sand around to make the new barriers, but there was no sand pumping, so and there was no barge tied up ready to discharge their loads. So
They're back
so
today.
where is the barge if that's what's holding it up?
They're back today.
Okay.
The pump out, which is the discharge of the sand onto our beach, that only takes about 1 hour.
Oh.
So they're doing 3 6-hour cycles right now. But you'll only see the dredge here actually an hour or 2, basically, while they do the hookup, the pump, and then the disconnect, and then sail away. So most of their time is spent in transit and picking up the sand. So yeah, you have to, I guess, we can let you know. We have our beach cameras trained on that, so you can certainly look at the city website homepage. You can see when the dredge is here. But again, they're going to wrap up May 21st, so we've got just about less than a week for them to complete their project.
Okay, thank you.
So just real quick while we have Andy too, I know I've only been here for like 3 or 4 years, but we've been doing the fall time, pushing sand up the beach. Is that going to continue?
Yeah, my understanding is that will continue.
Okay,
And
so
that's
we
it.
are still going to be bringing sand.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Winter Storm Burn Program, I think is what it's called, and it's run out of Public Works.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, I understand you're gonna be back to talk to us more about scoop permit later. Are there any other questions for
I
President?
remember one more.
He's got one more.
So, Leslie, I understand OCTA is looking at paying about $13 million in mitigation for the damage done in the very south end of town. Is that confirmed? Is in fact the city going to be able to have that money available? Are they going to manage those mitigation fees?
Andy might know more about that.
So, a couple of things. I did want to clarify, there was a question about how much sand the dredge could put down. For an order of magnitude, the Solana Beach project was 700,000 cubic yards, and they did that in about 60 days. So they can put down a lot of sand pretty quick once they find a borrow site and they get things moving. The mitigation is actually a function of the Coastal Commission, so when you get an emergency permit, you agree to future conditions. You don't know what they are yet. You agree to future conditions that, okay, we'll give you an emergency permit, but we're going to come back. We have, by the way, a Coastal Commission expert sitting here. We're lucky to have a staff that has worked with the Coastal Commission before. But on those emergency permits, what happens is they say, we'll give you the permit, and then we'll work out what those conditions are later. And right now, the Coastal Commission and the OCTA are in I guess you would call it a negotiation stage. But I think that in general round terms, where we're going to end up is about $13 million of contribution, which is essentially going to be about 500,000 cubic yards. What we're pushing for is we don't want them to give the money. We don't want them to give money to the bank. We want them to put 500,000 cubic yards of sand on our beach. The Coastal Commission has been relatively, I think, supportive of that. And that's the body that really needs to approve whether or not they're either going to give money to the sand bank or put actual sand on our beach. That's who we're working with right now. So I don't know if that answers the question, and I don't know if you have any insight into how those conditions are reached on an emergency permit, but it's after the fact, and they do have a formula, and there's a calculation of how those are calculated.
It is a negotiation, and generally Coastal likes to develop an actual project rather than a mitigation. They don't like putting money in the feed banks that sit for years and years either. But they will be strict about requiring a specified project with a certain amount of cubic yards and a guarantee from the contractor that it's going to happen, and some studies and the protections for grunions. So that's probably what they're negotiating.
Well, I think that in-kind mitigation would be preferential to just payment, an in lieu payment. And I think that remedying the beach where the damage was done, which should be a key component also. And I don't know if these all are blending together because OCTA happens to have a hot spot just to the north of that area where the damage occurred. And so hopefully OCTA will come and be able to put a bunch of sand back on that beach. But I think something critical for all of the citizens of San Clemente is to try to maintain that lateral access from the San Clemente State Beach to San Onofre State Beach. And maintaining sand on that section from the underpass at San Clemente State Beach to the Cypress Shore State Beach is a critical part of maintaining that lateral access. And so making sure that if they don't do in-kind mitigation, where they actually put the sand on the coast and maybe consider a trail on the landward side of the tracks, south of the Cypress Shore Tunnel to Cotton's Point, that if they do pay money, that money has strings attached, and that those strings say that it has to be spent on remedying where the damage was done. And so I just would like, to the extent that the city is involved, or the city does get those funds, that they also maintain that commitment that they'll spend that money where the damage was done. And hopefully embrace this idea of the lateral access between the two state parks. And then I'm just wondering, I don't know if Leslie, you know the answer to this, but is the reason why OCTA is incorporating sand and placing the sand, is it almost a pre-mitigation effort on their part so that they don't have to, because I know when they started this process, they applied for the emergency permit, they tried to pay just a couple $100,000 or a few $100,000, and it was only through citizen action that we got that amount up to $13 million. And so do they now know that it's expensive to dump rocks on our beach, and that they're trying to get in front of that with this effort?
I think so. We've had a lot of meetings with OCTA. I think the one challenge that OCTA is concerned about is that they can get an emergency permit to either enhance or even expand the revetment overnight. They can either get a waiver or an emergency permit, and they can do it overnight. Whereas placing sand on the beach seems to take either many months or even years to happen. So, as you know, about a week ago, I testified in front of a Senate committee that said we've got to find a way to make placing sand on the beach as easy and quick as putting rock on the revetment. And if we can do that, I think, frankly, in talking with OCTA, they would prefer to put sand on the beach. I was going to pull up a presentation that I gave to the Senate. If you want to see it, maybe at your next meeting, I'm glad to do that. It is way preferable for everyone to protect those railroad tracks with sand than with rock, including OCTA. They know that's a better way. The only way you can push water west is with sand. You can't push it with rock. And so I think everyone is in agreement there, including OCTA. The big challenge for them is they have one function, right? Their function is to keep the trains going down the track. And so if it takes months and months and months to put sand on the beach, and it only takes a matter of hours to get a permit to put rock on the revetment, they're going to put rock down every time. So we've got to work with the Coastal Commission. There's no such thing as a pre-approved project for the Coastal Commission, but maybe they're going to have to expand their thinking and say, in this particular case, we may have to have a standing permit in place that when there is a threat to the tracks, OCTA can immediately go out and protect those tracks with sand placement. Whether we can get there or not, that's what we should be pushing for as a city. That's what our Coastal Advisory Committee should be recommending to the Senate, to the Assembly, to give that instruction to the Coastal Commission. Because I think short of that, they will always continue to place rock on their revetment. It's just quicker.
Well, it certainly has been their path of least resistance, and they, I think, probably have used the permitting process to be able to pursue that path of least resistance, and that's something I think we probably should be on them as well. But I do agree with you, the Coastal Commission should be 100% behind this. It makes total sense. We can preserve a beach and maintain and protect the tracks, so hopefully we get there.
There's another thing that we want to be careful of, is that the Mariposa Bridge project actually was not an emergency permit. It was a waiver. And when you get a waiver, there may or may not even be conditions attached to that waiver. So if the Coastal Commission is going to allow any work on the revetment, it should always come with some sort of a permit so that there is some kind of mitigation attached to that. So I think that those are important things as we continue to kind of monitor what's happening on the railroad tracks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would completely agree with everything that Andy said, and if we can make it as easy to put sand as riprap, that would definitely be the way to go. And it would seem like it would be much less costly to OCTA in the long run than even considering, relocating the line for billions and billions of dollars. They could just take a fraction of that and buy a dredging barge and just maintain our our beaches that would also maintain their rail line. So wholeheartedly agree with that. Any other questions for Leslie or Randy? If not, let's move on to oral communications. Do we have any oral comments for tonight? Randy? Nothing? Okay, well then let's move on to item number 4, unfinished business. Consideration of subcommittee appointments. We had 1 vacancy. In our last meeting, we established 3 subcommittees, and we had 1 vacancy on our sand acquisition subcommittee. The sand acquisition committee consists of Matt and Aaron, and with 1 vacancy. And I would like to make a motion to have John Dow fill that vacancy. If anybody else has a discussion. John was not present at our last meeting, so we weren't able to place him. So I'd like to take this opportunity to make a motion to have John fill that vacant position. Have a second? Does anybody want to make a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you, Susan.
Thank
A
you.
little awkward pause there. So, all right, all in favor for John filling the vacancy on the sand acquisition committee, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, any? Okay, motion carries. Welcome, John, to the sand acquisition subcommittee.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to new business. In our last meeting, we had formed our subcommittees, and I had instructed the subcommittees to meet and to discuss whatever they wanted to discuss. And if they did meet, and if they did have any discussions, I would ask them to kind of report back on anything they may have discussed or anything that they might want to mention. I know that Aaron and Matt and myself, I think we met and we talked. Is there anything you want to mention about that? I think the main thing of the meeting was to just to initiate a dialogue outside of this public setting, and it's get to know each other a little bit better as a committee, initiate some dialogue as smaller groups. So I don't think there was anything extraordinary that came out of it other than monitoring many of the ongoing projects that the city is currently engaged in. I think that our mission as a subcommittee is to monitor and report and recommend to the city if we see any areas of improvement or any other alternatives that the council might want to consider with respect to sand acquisition, sand retention, and water quality. So, and on our sand retention subcommittee, I know John Dalagowski and I briefly discussed it. And basically the sand retention issues really revolve around our nature-based solution study that's kind of ongoing. So we're definitely looking at that. I think under sand acquisition, we know that we have the SCOOP permit going on in the current Army Corps program and the other strategic programs that Leslie is leading. I think under sand acquisition, we might look at, we talk about sand dredging from these designated locations that the Army Corps has identified. I guess I would just say, would it be possible, to identify sand that's immediately offshore of our own beach that could be brought up and redeposited on our beach? I mean, not necessarily from these designated source areas that have been identified by the Army Corps, but do we know if we have a repository of sand just offshore that the city of San Clemente might be able to acquire and pump up on our beach? So anyway, that's one of the things that we might want to consider or talk about. But I would recommend that the subcommittees continue to get together in between our public meetings and have discussions and bring any thoughts or comments forward. John and Susan, I know you're on the Water Quality Committee, and I think you actually took the time to put together some notes and presentation?
I did, yeah, that, I put together a presentation that includes both sand retention and water quality,
Okay.
so, and,
Just really quickly, we haven't skipped over we're talking about 5A right now as a group, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So we haven't gone into the individuals yet. Because there is, for sand acquisition and sand retention, I think there are two things that I would like to ask. Kind of the city and the professionals in the room, and where our best effort could be placed. Specifically sand acquisition, right? Everybody's talking about dredging right now, but obviously we have rail and we have truck acquisition possibilities, right? The Prado Dam is the rail acquisition, and that Capo Beach is already set up to have side rail, right? So you can get sand brought to Capo Beach, dropped off, and brought in by truck to North Beach, theoretically, right? So that's a different form of sand acquisition. Now, the only area that is not able to be replenished easily is the south side of the city. So it is understanding, does the city need to put something, like do we need to start talking about how we can have some sort of right of way, secondary, like something where you can offload rail trucks or something on that south side that then uses Cotton's Point as a feeder or something. So that was the basics of the sand acquisition, is diversification of our sand sources from dredging solely.
And I would say, would that be addressed under the scoop permit as well, in terms of
Yeah,
how
like the
sand could
delivery,
be-
how it's delivered, I guess.
I can address that now, or I can address it into the next item.
Oh yeah, because you were going over
she's
scoop,
gonna
right?
She's gonna go
Okay.
in the presentation.
Yeah, and then the sand retention, I would just say that I think it would be in the best interest of our subcommittee to help or to have. So we obviously have somebody that's very familiar with the California Coast Commission that's already helping out with retention, right? And they're the dark horse in the room, right? They will, whatever type of retention project we have, like we still don't even know if they're gonna approve Oceanside's that'll speed up, right? Like that's still not there. So I guess, does it make sense for the subcommittee to help the resiliency project look for the most efficient sites to focus on? Because I can tell you, after talking with a lot of the surfing population, surf riders in these I guess, sorry, I'm all over the place right now, but the resiliency study is being influenced by the public right now, right? But the public doesn't necessarily have the knowledge of the Coastal Commission and what is most efficiently inputted, right? So in terms of kind of focusing that study, is there an opportunity to influence that? And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Is that a question to staff?
I guess it is. It's like, do we just, like, on the retention project, we can talk about all the different ways for years, but like, what helps the city out in this case? Like, what can our discussions be most beneficial towards? It's the only point of clarification I would want to, like how can we use our time more wisely, or to the most wisely? Those are the only two questions I had about the subcommittees. I apologize.
No, okay, yeah, if staff sees a question in there that they can help answer.
Great question, Committee Member Schmidt. I'm going to just step back and talk a little bit more globally for this meeting, and maybe to help the subcommittees focus their work efforts. So the intention here is that the work plan projects involve a lot of research from the committee members. I think we're all aware of that. We have some very knowledgeable staff that are here to assist, but they have their own tasks to do, so they're not going to really be able to spend an exorbitant amount of time assisting in that research effort. However, with that said, we do have information that we can share as I'll say related projects are being conducted through the city. Leslia has a good example of this with the SCOOP permit, or I should say the SCOOP program. The agenda identifies the staff's reports on some coastal issues later on, and I think it might be in the committee's best interest to discuss each subcommittee item and have staff present any information that we have to share first, and that might help inform what the next steps are and how the committee's work can best utilize and facilitate coordination with the other cities' existing efforts. As far as the sand acquisition project itself, from what staff has gathered, generally speaking, we see the effort of that subcommittee to be looking at where to acquire sand. While it's important to keep in mind transportation, both operational and cost considerations, the work plan project itself is more about identifying sources of that sand and doing whatever research we can to figure out what would produce beach compatible sand that we could bring. The council, upon reviewing recommendations, they'll give direction for additional research or looking into what the actual costs of bringing such sources to the city are. So with that, I would say it'd probably be best to just have staff, starting with the sand acquisition subcommittee, have staff do their reports on that particular topic and then help inform.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you.
John, did you want to start your presentation?
Yeah. So how does this work? Do I present from the podium up there or just here at my desk? or-
Right here's fine.
Right here. And then I can give directions to advance slides. Yeah.
Sure. Is your mic on?
Thank you. No, it's not. Okay. Very good. So, well, just for review, I've listed the goals that are included in the work plan that was approved for the sand retention project. We're not calling them projects, rather than goals. So the first project is sand retention, and for our goals, the first one is to advise the city council on best methods to retain sand on San Clemente beaches and near shore, identify and present additional and or alternative beach sand retention programs or studies for the city council consideration, review the nature-based coastal and resiliency project feasibility study, and my understanding is that this is due in mid-2024. I'm not sure quite when, and then as part of that review, provide recommendations to the city council on proposed sand retention strategies. And the deliverable of this project is to be the compilation of recommendations relevant to the project to be forwarded to city council. Next slide, please. And so I've taken a first shot at just planning what we can do in need of this project. First one is to perform internet literature search and review of sand retention strategies and approaches. Review projects completed by coastal engineering consulting firms to assess sand retention strategies and structures. There's a fair amount available on the internet and different projects that we can bring to the attention and share in these meetings. I think might be helpful. Some examples were provided by the city's consultants, but I think it would be helpful to have more examples. Identify specific examples of sand retention strategies and coastal structures used in other areas of California and around the world and their effectiveness. I'm very interested in seeing other specific applications in California, and I don't know if the city's consultants can bring this information to us, or if they already are involved in other projects where that have been implemented and where they've had an opportunity to see how they perform. But I think it'd be very useful to see, especially California examples and other areas, whatever we can find. And then this last bullet, to evaluate the potential for use of nearshore sand to build up the beaches. That was mentioned by Matthew, and I know that Mr. Knobloch is very interested in this topic. I've done a little bit of research into it, but there's not a lot of information. I haven't found any instances in which cities have actually actively mined the nearshore sand and put it back on the beaches. There's part of it is that there's generally the thickness of sand is not that great to be mined. There are some concerns about changing the gradient of the sand that will increase the seaward migration of the sand in the future. Also, when the sand is eroded off the beach and pulled into the nearshore environment, those sandbars can act as a source of sand that can be moved back into the shore during the summertime. So these are issues on the negative side, but I think it's still worth looking into in more detail and see if we find out how much sand there is, how far out we would need to be offshore to gather sand and not have an impact on the nearshore environment. Next slide, please. And then this is just a brief summary on what we've done over the past few months. We're still getting up to speed on the issues, and but the first thing is that Susan and I attended the Rebeach Oceanside Winning Design Workshop on January 31st. And that was very interesting. It appears that Oceanside is probably a couple of years ahead of San Clemente. They went through a pretty detailed compilation of alternatives. They had 3 engineering teams that provided projects for their consideration. They voted on it. They brought it to the city council. They had very extensive community relations program that was pretty successful, and I think that's one way to bring the community on board towards what we think is a good approach, because as Matthew mentioned, the community is providing a lot of feedback, and that can direct the project in one direction or the other, but we need to include their opinions, certainly, but they may not have the background to understand what the implications are of certain preferences. So I think having community relations is really useful. And then the second item, Susan and I met on a few occasions and walked the entire shoreline of San Clemente, something I hadn't done in a few years, to familiarize ourselves with the current conditions. Took a few photographs. We also took some photographs of this very high tide that occurred on May 7th after the city council meeting, and I've got a couple of photographs here later on in this presentation that I'll share with you. And we observed the areas where the additional riprap has been added in the area of Riviera and Cypress Shores. I've got a couple of photographs there as well. We attended the nature-based coastal project feasibility study, as probably all of you did, and provide some verbal comments during that meeting. Next slide, please. And we attended the OCTA informational meeting at the San Clemente Community Center on March 20th. And I submitted written review comments on the nature-based coastal project feasibility study, just as a private citizen or as a resident, not on behalf of this coastal advisory committee, but just individually. I'm not quite sure what the disposition was. Did you get a copy of those, Mike? Okay, good. And I've begun the internet search of the sand retention approaches, and contacted Jamie Timberlake to see how we could coordinate with her, since they've made some really great progress, and it seemed like it might be advantageous for her to make a presentation to this group or to the city council. So if there's any preference of those two alternatives, let us know. I've also made an effort to contact Sherry Sullivan from Marine Corps from Camp Pendleton. I haven't heard back from her, but she had some comments at the April 19th meeting, in which she mentioned that they're doing some monitoring of their beaches there. So interested in finding out what they're doing, and if they have any long-term data, that would be great, since they're obviously directly adjacent to us.
John, just a quick question.
Yeah.
Zach, would it be possible to ask Zach, with his Coastal Commission background, to just kind of next meeting give us a brief history of Coastal Commission revetment in Southern California? Like, would you be able to, like, major projects on the coast that Coastal Committee has approved?
Yeah, I can give an overview.
Or just like a bullet, like just a quick 2-minute, 3-minute of like what has currently been approved and what is in the pipeline, because I know there's like Topanga Beach and these other kind of things that Coastal Committee is weighing on. And then ultimately, like, Oceanside could be 3 years ahead of us, but if the Coastal Commission doesn't like their design, then they're not that far ahead of us. So I feel like learning about the Coastal Commission would benefit the retention team very much. And we have an expert, or the subject matter expert here. So I would just like to add that to a bullet point, John.
That sounds great.
I would add that I think this research is excellent, and this is exactly the purview of the committee and what we were hoping for.
Okay.
And I can respond to questions and provide context and
Okay.
filler, and I can give a brief presentation next meeting too. But this is a really good start.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is basically just to kind of focus our work going forward and to elicit feedback. And
May I add to what Matt was saying? Towards you, Zach, when you do that study or that brief overlook, I think the money counts too. How much money that they were asking for and how much money that they would get, the grantee. It's really important. And then the kinds of terms that they're looking for in terms of how long it would take to start their program and end. I know there's a lot of things going on right now with the Ocean Protection Council with grants, as well as the California Coastal Commission.
So I guess just to follow up on this, is this asking too much of Zach's time in that we should be doing our own research? Just a question.
Well, there's a couple things that I've kind of heard throughout the meeting here. So, in terms of informing us as a committee, I heard Andy who kind of volunteered to give the presentation to who did he give the presentation to regarding the city Senate?
Senate.
To the Senate?
Some Senate committee, right?
Is that
California
Is that
Senate?
California Senate? Okay. So he seemed to believe that there was some information in there that we might find interesting.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that staff could consider for our next meeting. And then what I hear you saying is that perhaps we would benefit from hearing from Jamie from Oceanside about some of the things that they're doing. I don't know if she had a camp presentation, or maybe Leslie could present something that she's done, but that's another thing that I'm kind of hearing that would be helpful to us. And then Matt, you're asking Zach about,
Or just the coastal committee expert, like,
Well,
the coastal advisory
and,
committee.
and just to be clear, you were asking about, coastal committees,
Coastal commission. So
commission's experience in permitting sand.
retention
Or
projects
retention
or large
projects?
engineering projects on the coastline, right?
Or-
Like when was it for anything? Like when was the last major? 80s was when Huntington got its jetties. Like North OC got its jetties. So the 80s and 90s, like maybe early 90s was the last time that somebody was allowed to put a jetty in anywhere.
So, yeah, I mean, if we could clarify it a little bit more narrower.
Okay.
For
Successful retention, successful retention, right? Because they seem to be against jetties, so that's something that we wouldn't want to like look into for sand retention if it's just going to get tossed aside as old and outdated, I guess.
Okay.
Because they're the last straw. Like that and Surfrider will be the biggest kind of lawyer issues, right? I mean, I'm sure there's other state like environmentalists and stuff too. We probably do it, but the Coastal Commission and Surfrider would be any sort of retention projects.
I would just add that the Coastal Commission and Surfrider have been pretty involved in the nature-based coastal resiliency
Yes.
study, and they know what's being studied and what the alternatives are.
Okay.
That doesn't mean they're going to support every alternative, but they're supportive of us at least considering those options.
Yes.
So I would ask staff to consider potentially scheduling some presentations to us in the next meeting. So back to your presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
All right,
Can
go.
I add something else just on top of that?
Is your mic on? It's
It's
on.
on. Zach, I had talked to, who am I thinking of now? Jamie, because I've known her for years, and I had mentioned, this was last year, I talked to her about what we were doing, and she was very interested in that, and she said, anytime you need me to come up, just give me a call. So it's not as hard to reach the people who are trying to do the things, even if they started 3 years ahead of us. I kind of like that because she can tell us where the ball points might be and other ideas and strategies for retention kinds of things. So I just want to pass that on, as I think it's very doable.
I think it's a good idea. I'd encourage one of the committee members to reach out to Jamie, and then we can add it to the agenda. And
Yes, well, I think that.
I'd be happy to speak with Jamie before about the
Yeah,
presentation.
I just wanted, in terms of understanding the process, is that I think we needed to make that request or suggestion at this meeting so we can make sure that we can actually add it onto the agenda for next meeting. So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're, whether it's you arranging it or whether we put it on the record that this is something that we'd like to do, so we can try and get it on the
Well, but John just
Yeah,
indicated he
I've
altered.
already, I've left a couple of messages for her, so she knows that we're
Right.
interested, and she,
All right, let the
So
record
it's-
show
yeah, was willing
that
to
John
do
has requested that. Okay, please continue.
okay, well, actually, I'm almost done here. I think the next slide is a photo. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is at this high tide on May 7th. It was, I recently downloaded this application on my phone that shows the tidal variations, and very useful, and there happened to be this very high tide directly following the city council meeting. So this was like 6.2 feet above sea level, and this is at the south end of the parking lot in Cabo Beach. And wow, these high tides don't last very long, but they come roaring up. Go to the next slide, please. The next slide is a little video clip. If you click on it, will it start to move? Yeah, there. Click there. Oh, let's see what it looks like in live action. It's quite a look at the degree to which that house is being impacted. It's going almost up to the level of the roof. And luckily, these really high tide, they don't last that long, and then the tide goes from like 5 feet to 6.2 feet in literally like 20 minutes, and then it's back down to 5 feet 15 or 20 minutes later. So they're short-lived, but they're pretty destructive. And I think when you see a video like that, it sort of highlights the the need to plan for these, these ephemeral occurrences of very high water that can do a lot of damage. Next slide, please. This is at Cypress Shores, and this is a little hard to tell from this angle, but this is right where it's obviously in line with the riprap, and you can see the additional riprap that has been added in this area, and I believe this is also a video. Could you click on that? And you can see that in the area where they've added the additional riprap, the waves come much further up to the rocks than they do. We're standing on the original riprap level. The waves are, you can see they come all the way up to the rocks, and if you look closer, you can actually see the wave reflect off the rocks and then head back out to sea, and that's what causes this additional scouring at the base of the riprap. So I thought this is a good example that they're, I'm really happy to hear that OCTA now sounds that they're sort of on board with this concept, but there seem to be a lot of non-believers. So I think to the extent that we can gather data that it's useful. I've been trying to locate some professional papers specifically on this topic, documenting increased erosion after adding a riprap and additional riprap, and I haven't found anything. But if any of you know of any, I'd like to hear about it. And next slide, please.
You know what the tide was, John, on that picture?
Probably
No, I don't remember offhand.
Probably a mid tide. It probably wasn't even a high tide.
No, it looks like very low tide.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a long time.
It was a mid to low, I can already tell you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so Susan is going to give us the update on the water quality project, and she's asked me to chirp in a few locations.
That's correct.
Okay.
Alrighty. I'm just going to start with water quality and talk about the project that we're doing, and I'm going to go over the purpose and goals just so that you have it in your mindset when I'm talking. So our first bullet is advise the City Council on ways to improve water quality, especially at Poche Beach. That's notable. The next bullet is identify and present other beach water quality monitoring improvement programs, studies for City Council consideration. And the last is items may include identifying water quality improvement strategies, program development, public education and outreach, and coordination with water customers, etc. I think that's a healthy list of things that we're pretty much on the line of following that kind of route, but focusing more on the most important of water quality first, and then going to products and things of that nature. But we had a great meeting with Nikki Beach. Nikki, is that you out there? Would you stand up a minute? I want to give Nikki a big hand. She and her group, she has gone out of her way to accommodate us with all kinds of questions and differences between, the chief primary background documents that she dug out and talked to us for a good 20 minutes just about that. And it's just amazing how much you have to hold in the head like Nikki's, because all of these questions come up when we have really important projects that are due and grants that I think you just dropped off a grant request today, didn't you? So she's a very busy lady, and I'm really grateful that she's donating some of her time with John and I as we plow through this. So thank you very much. Alrighty, getting back to the next thing I'd like to bring in is some of the work that we performed. John already told you about that, but we also went up and surveyed and photographed the Prima de Checa Creek from Prima de Checa landfill outlet to Poche Beach water treatment plant outlet. And that was a lot of fun, actually. We invariably, and most of these stops that we made, as it goes down from the de Checa Creek, it goes into certain neighborhoods, etc. And you can stop, we look out, we take pictures, etc. And a customer or a neighbor will come out, or they're working on their yard, and they'll come and ask us, "Oh, what are you doing here? Or what would you like to know?" And they get into the history themselves. So it's very interesting to have all of that kind of interaction with neighbors who are near these groupings of getting down to the parks or getting down to Poche. It's the movement of the water and the channels, etc. So at any rate, that brings me right to John, because he really is a specialist in hydrology, etc. So I want him to take over this section of the Prima de Checa tour that we self-did, but we got a lot out of it. Thank you, John.
Yeah, that was kind of a spur of the moment activity, and we got photographs, but I didn't think it was necessary to go into a lot of detail for this, but if other people are interested, we could do that at some point. But yeah, this particular drainage, it starts out at the boundary of the Prima de Checa landfill, and it comes out of there. They channelize all of their surface runoff into a catchment basin, and then it goes through a engineered wetland and comes out into a lined concrete channel and flows open to the sky for a few hundred feet before it goes underground and becomes channelized. And from there, until you get to the ocean, there's a few areas where you can visually look at the flow and see what the water looks like. But in most cases, it's underground. There are storm drains that come in from the surrounding neighborhoods in that valley, in the Forster Ranch neighborhood where I happen to live, so I'm pretty familiar with it. And they drain in there so that the flow slowly increases as you go out to the ocean. And as you get closer to the ocean, you can see just visually observe the flow rate increasing. And the water becomes a little more turbid, although that's highly variable. It's in most cases it's not necessarily turbid, but there's definitely increasing amounts of biological growth on the side of the channel. It was also pretty obvious that there was a really significant increase in flow upstream and downstream from the Shore Cliffs golf course. And so there is some thought that perhaps they may be watering more than they need to. I believe the city has worked with them on this issue in the past, and I don't know if they could reduce it any more than they can, but definitely there's a significant additional increment of flow that occurs at that location. I'm just going to go into this number 2 and say here under initial review of primary documents that having not really had any prior contact with this area of knowledge, specifically, water quality issues for San Clemente, I had to do a lot of background reading, and these 3 documents are really excellent, and I have to say I'm kind of amazed that the quality of work that the city has done for a relatively small city. These are really good quality work and a very good summary of surface water and water quality issues. So I think the city deserves a big pat on the back for that. This last one, the Comprehensive Human Waste Source Reduction Study, Source Reduction Strategy Dry and Wet Weather Source Investigation Report. I've just started reading that, but it is a detailed assessment looking at sampling water in various areas within this drainage to determine if there are any particular sources leading to the ephemeral but sometimes pretty high bacterial concentrations in Poche Creek, which is leading to the exceedances of water quality standards at Poche Beach. And so they did a really great job, and I quite honestly haven't read through it yet, but I'm quite impressed with the amount of work that's gone into it, and so we'll be done with that next meeting. So
Thank you. And just a few comments on these primary background documents. Those are really the 1, 2, 3 Bibles of the city right now, as Nikki explained to me. And I'm just going to give you just a couple reasons why. Yeah. For example, the Jurisdictional Runoff Management Plan, it details the citywide programs and activities designed to prevent and reduce stormwater pollution within city boundaries in compliance with the 2013 Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permit. The JRMP includes the following BMPs, the best management policies, which are techniques or controls used to prevent or reduce the discharge of pollutants, such as fertilizers, pesticides, and organic waste into the storm drain system. This helpful document below, and it's a whole long list. I mean, there's probably 50 different subject matters that you can inquire into. How do you're going to what's a special event, BMP, a water sewer utility, etc. There's a whole length of resources here that I didn't know even existed. So now we know this, and that's another thing that I think John's happy about. It makes the chase a little faster, doesn't it, for finding these kinds of information. So, and the second item here, and by the way, the jurisdictional runoff management plan really is the mother of the Clean Ocean Program. The Clean Ocean Program encompasses all parts of 3 large watersheds: the Prima de Checa, the Segunda de Checa, and the San Mateo, and several smaller ones that drain to the ocean through the coastal canyons. So within each watershed, the city maintains a storm drain system that was designed to collect only rainwater for discharge into the Pacific Ocean. So unlike the sewage from our homes and businesses, stormwater is not treated before entering the ocean. When it picks up trash and pollutants on its way to the beach, it can cause water quality issues where we surf, swim, and play, and where the ocean provides habitats for local marine life. So stormwater isn't the only contributor to ocean water quality problems. Urban runoff, which is water contributed to the storm drain system from things like irrigation system leaks or overuse, residential car washing, garden hose use, and also can deliver bacteria and other pollutants straight to the ocean. Illicit non-storm water discharges into the gutter and the storm drain can also include even more detrimental pollutants such as paint, used motor oil, and recreation vehicle wastewater. So what is the city doing? What did they do with this? They created the Clean Ocean Program. And from that, of course, then how do we maintain this? Well, we get a clean ocean fee. We explain to our community what all the kinds of things that this money could do for our community. Right before this one expired, Dave had called me into his office and asked me what I was thinking about the Clean Ocean Fee. And I said, I think we should make every effort to get it renewed. And I'll tell you why. And I was telling him, every time you put an ad in the newspaper, it's usually a hose or it's raining at the time, and the message is, don't water when it's raining. And so if you put in that 4 times a year, it's the same answer. It's like we're being treated like we're 3-year-olds. Don't water when it's raining. And I said to him, look at all the projects where you spend the money on with Clean Ocean money. And he said, there's really a lot. And I said, so what about the ones, think about the ones that we've done just this year or last year, and take some pictures of those. And instead of having the stormy day, put those pictures in and a caption under each of how many inspections were done at this, or here's one of our win-wins, and put the address where it is, so the community can see where all of this work is happening. It's not just on the sand. It's not just at Pochi. It's not just at the ocean. It's all over our neighborhoods where the Clean Ocean Fee is helping our community. So I wanted to pass that along. It's very important that we understand that. And then as Nikki explained to me, the other big books here, the information that John was addressing as well, these are really great resources to find out, not only about pollution, but the kinds of pollution. I mean, are we looking for pathogens in this water? And is it only at Pochi? Is it somewhere else, but we're not looking there, or we're not testing for that? So there's a lot of good things that are resourceful right in our own city. So that's a good find that we had. And then moving on to assistance at Earth Day activities. We were on site to assist with the setup and breakdown and answer questions for all kinds of things. And they also had a beach cleanup. And in the midst of this, as people are coming and going, and it's very busy, we discovered that San Clemente sent a utility crew that uses robotic video robots to visually inspect for broken pipes, inflow, and illegal lateral pipes. Well, you know, I've worked as a volunteer with the city for 14 years, and I never knew we had this robot function. And what a great deal! And it was actually, again, Nikki who pointed that out to me. And then when Councilmember Duncan came, we pointed it out to him, and he, you know, took him over there, and he was listening. By that time, John was already in there, being a techie that he is. And it was like we were this big crowd of San Clemente people in this thing, and they were just sharing the most wonderful information about how useful this robot can be. So I have talked to Dave Riebensdorf, and asked him to sit down and talk to me about that, and let's get some ideas of how we can use that with the Pochi problem and any other problems we might see. So that appointment is going to be set for the first week of June. I think whenever John gets back. When are you coming back from your trip?
I'm not sure the exact date, June 2nd, something like that.
Okay, well, and then, Nikki, I'm gonna ask you, and one more thing, because Dave did ask me to ask you to set that meeting up. When I find out when John's returning, I'll let you know, and you can make that appointment for us then. And we are going to invite, Chris Duncan as well, and maybe one other person, maybe one or two from the city council or other places. But at any rate, that's a good sign too, so I'm very excited about that. And then, let's see, the inspection of Pochi Beach treatment plant to look for reported, oh yeah.
That next line? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Yeah, we had at one point, been told that somebody had saw an extra pipeline discharging from Pochi Beach on treated water into the ocean. But John went down and looked underneath and over and above the houses, etc., and did not find another one. And you also checked the UV station, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I observed it. It was running. Yeah, I think the pipe that the gentleman who operates this robotic video inspection robot for the city of San Clemente, which I agree with Susan, is a fantastic tool that the city has, and they own it. It can be used on projects when a need is identified. So it's great. But yes.
There was no light there. Okay,
I'm sorry,
I'm going to move on.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Thank you. Yeah, let's keep it moving,
I'm
please.
still on the same page. I'd like to talk to you about now the focus on non-structural BMPs, practices that reduce inputs of pollutants into the watershed. These are the things that we brought up with Nikki as well, and I left her a message a day or so ago asking for her opinion on all of these outdoor types of programs, and the ones that also are either affiliated with any government agency or organization or schools or just places that are managing water conservation in various ways. I'd like to get all kinds of those out and about for public knowledge and maybe learning things. And she's also invited us to use some of these mailings that they do to fold up some of this information and put them in the envelope. And maybe we could even put, and now that I know the people at the SE Times very well, and I could usually get just some little public announcements in there, and just those little educational things that could come. It might even be a movie that's based on environmental or coastal issues that we're having. My kids really want to be informed, and so do their parents, so do the schools. So we might want to think about that. That's just another idea that comes from sitting and putting our brains together with somebody like John and Nikki. And then the maintenance of private plumbing and public collection systems. That's very interesting too. A lot of these are found. We do this in the city, and again, the education, outreach, and enforcement of BMPs. Most of the contracts now, because because the companies that are giving you technical support now have access to those technical tools. And consequently, and employees who have all those technical skills. So now I noticed in the city, for example, you hired, or the recommendation was made to make, I think, a Genetec the winner of the bid, and for those reasons that I just cited, because they have it, it's less expensive, they have a bigger stake in it, and they're stakeholders in the community. So it's a win-win all the way around. So it's a nice way to use these subjects that we're talking about. And then the structural BMPs, those are the natural or constructed swales that on all of these are made really to capture trash coming from the neighborhoods or because of storms or whatever else. So the trash capture devices, all of these next ones are all regulatory. So we must comply with those. So the trash booms and the storm channels, the diversions of untreated runoff to treatment facilities, and the water treatment, currently the UV filtration at Poche. And those are all really important. We have to keep counting of all the water, the trash that's happening. Whether it's in cubic yards or whether it's coming out of water, measuring, or the testing that they're doing from the county. So all of those are critically important to the way that we can use the things that our city is doing for us. Let me move on to something that we included, because one of the things that we were talking about is at Poche, maybe some of the problems there were human,
Humans, dogs.
Enterococcus genes, bacteria, just like, or they could be pets, etc. So the question of dogs on the beach came up again, because the Beaches, Parks and Recreation Commission has made a proposition to the City Council to try a pilot project with a dog park. But they started out with one and now they want two. One is at North Beach and the other one is at Lost Winds to Linda Lane. And I am just thinking of this, thinking of all of you who are involved in the new sand, etc. This would not be a good idea for putting in new sand and getting it settled down and not having dogs running all over and literally pooping all over, because they will be very excited. Hold on just a second.
Sure.
So we're looking into that. That's going to go back to the City Council for some questions, but I ask you to think about that yourselves, and I just don't think this is the year for doing a trial pilot project with dogs.
Yeah, and let me just add something here, that the reason this issue of dog waste came up to the forefront is that the problem with the water quality at Poche Beach, it's all bacterial. It's total cold form,
Yes.
or Enterococcus, that type of thing, and but it's ephemeral. Most of the time they're within guidelines. Occasionally they have a big spike and everything, so they're not really sure where it's coming from, and they believe that they've eliminated the possibility of a leaking pipe of wastewater somehow getting into this surface water drainage or an illegal connection. They think that those have been eliminated, so therefore that doesn't leave a lot. And from what I read on the internet, there's actually a number of papers showing that dog poop has a really significant impact on surface water quality, and I came across a number of studies that have been done in Europe showing in areas, and they give estimates of the number of dogs visiting certain areas, the number of people who own dogs within certain areas, comparing the water quality, and in those studies it had a big impact, and so therefore that it could be the source of this bacterial contamination in San Clemente, and that's why the topic is included here.
So just a quick question. Is it really Lost Winds to Linda Lane, like that entire area?
Yeah.
That's pretty much all of the main San Clemente beaches?
Yeah, I was shocked that was the second one. I was shocked.
So we have a North Beach section, and then we have the rest of St. Lenny?
No, not quite, but that's a long place. And that's a good straightaway, and it's the curve down there.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot of places to, there's that whole segment that's a straight line pretty much, and the e-bikers are on there, even though they're not using their electricity or whatever, they are pedaling on there. It's just, I just think that this is not the year to try this.
All right, do we have anything more on?
Yes,
on
yes, we do.
This, we've been at this for over 30 minutes. I want to keep the meeting going. I know we got Leslie that has another presentation to make.
Okay, well, this is part of my presentation.
Okay.
I should be finished in about 3 minutes.
Thank you.
And then the things that Nikki also shared with us when we met with her is things that she's willing to do. We can seek out a report and educate on instances of over-irrigation. Perhaps Shorecliffs Golf Course would be one that we can check out, and I will do that. And the CAP can continue to educate neighborhoods and HOAs about urban runoff, another great idea. The City of San Clemente can facilitate bill insert placements, as I mentioned to you just before. And that would include graphics and things like that that would catch their attention. And then they could also, the dog waste things, she's got some suggestions about, the dog waste bag dispensers, and maybe Friends of San Clemente could help there. But I'm not going to go down that road until we find out what's going to happen with the proposed dog park. And at any rate, the last thing that's really important here is the water quality testing, the sampling that the county does this for us every week. And so we're going to go up there and shadow the guy who does this, or the lady who does this, that does the testing. So we've contacted the Orange County Healthcare Agency to see when they're down here and do the quality sampling with them, and then go back. And so we could look at the raw bacteria, and also we could attend a Unified Monitoring Program meeting with SACWA, and that would be a good thing to do as well. So we're putting our feet in there, at least I am, to get involved with this, because knowing what kind of bacteria is in after it's been tested will be very informational for us. There have been times where Pochi had all LAs, so they had great scores. So what happened to those, we don't know, but I'm just determined to find out what happened to those.
Yeah.
And then we have one last
Excuse me a
photograph.
second. And the reason we thought it might be a good idea to observe their sampling, it's just to verify that they're taking a sample in the ocean that's representative of what it would be like in the mixing zone, and they're not just walking up and taking a sample from the discharge pipe, which is a very convenient location to take a sample, but it's probably not representative of the beach.
Okay.
And that's it. This is just a close-up slide. That should look familiar. I think this was taken on Sunday. We're working on the berm right now.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you very much for that very, very detailed presentation for water quality, and put a lot of time into that. So thank you, Susan and John, for that. Thank you very much. Okay, next item 6 is items from staff. We have another presentation from Isaiah.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and committee members. This item is a SCOOP update. SCOOP stands for Sand Compatibility and Opportunistic Use Program. SCOOP is what I like to call another tool for the Coastal Resiliency Toolbox. So this should be viewed as a companion project to projects like the Army Corps project, which are long-term planned projects where we have a dedicated borrow site that we're going to be accessing via dredge. These are to supplement the bigger sand replenishment projects. Next slide, please. I think most of you know that the city did have a SCOOP program previously. It was in place from about 2000 to 2016. The city had 2 small projects, really small pilot projects, just to see the mechanics and the logistics of SCOOP and see how it would work. The sand source for both of these projects was the Santa Ana River. There's a site at 405 and the Santa Ana River, at the intersection of those two Resources, and that's the source of the sand that was brought to the city. So the permits expired, unfortunately, and we are in the process now of reestablishing the SCOOP program in St. Clemente. Previously, there were 4 sites in total covering about 1 mile of city beaches. So we had a site at North Beach, a second site at Linda Lane, and then 2 sites south of the pier at T Street. So as we're moving forward now, most of you probably know that the City Council approved contract at the last City Council meeting. So we have the contractors compiling their data requests, and we're going to kick off the program here very soon. And what they're doing in this first phase is really to look at what the city had in place before, including the existing permits and the environmental, and make a determination as to whether there's usable data from the original program, lessons learned, observations, and things of that nature. What we're going to do is to look for opportunities to build on the previous program. As I indicated, it covered about 1 mile of the city's beaches. There's about 5 miles in total in San Clemente, so we're looking for opportunities to expand the SCOOP program. You mentioned earlier the next meeting, and I was going to offer that we could have a public meeting element, stakeholder outreach opportunity here at the next Coastal Advisory Committee meeting, if you are so inclined. We will have at that point the next deliverable, which is a draft design memorandum. So this will be our 3rd iteration of the designs based on the community feedback that we received on the 2nd iteration. So it is sort of similar to what's happening in Oceanside, although they had a jury, they had an international design competition. We started with a couple of coastal engineering firms, really what I like to think of as the best of the best, the dream team for Southern California. They're the most experienced, both in coastal engineering and biological resources, and they're a team that has great relationships with the regulatory agencies. So they are the ones who are advising the city on best options for successful project implementation. This will be about a 6-month time frame to develop SCOOP. So sorry, I was just talking there about the nature-based program.
Yeah, I'd be confused there for a second.
Sorry, there's a lot of overlap in the teams actually. It's Coastal Frontiers, Moffitt and Nichol, Merkel and Associates, and then we have another firm from, I think, the LA area that's also doing some biological monitoring. So there is a lot of cross-pollination with the 2 projects, so I apologize for that if I confused any of you. So with respect to the SCOOP program, this first phase is about a 6-month time frame, and we will come probably to an upcoming meeting, maybe July, if we're ready, just to give you an overview of what the scope of work looks like, and to give you an opportunity to provide some input to the team. So both of those items, the SCOOP and the nature-based, might be on the July agenda. Depends on what you would like to see. After we complete this program definition for SCOOP, then the next phase would be to conduct environmental review, and then ultimately to obtain the permits, and then to start implementing SCOOP projects on a regular basis. So some exciting news, some sort of late-breaking news, as the city manager likes to say, things are changing very rapidly in the SCOOP universe. So we are working right now with Orange County Public Works and Orange County Parks to develop a small SCOOP project at North Beach, looking at about 30,000 cubic yards of sand, maybe 25. We are hoping to be on the Coastal Commission agenda for next month, the June agenda. That meeting is in, I believe it's in Morro Bay. So we'll travel there if we need to, but this is going to be a Coastal Development Permit waiver, CDP waiver. And we're asking for an expedited process because the material will be available starting in June. We don't want to miss the opportunity to get it while it's available. Sediment testing is still to be performed. They're currently excavating the material out of the riverbed. They are sorting it. They're going to stockpile it for us. We simply need to have trucks go and pick up the material and bring it to the city. We'll then have equipment on the beach that moves the sand into place, grades it, smooths it out, And again, we're hoping to implement that project as early as about a month from now. So a lot of moving parts there. I'm sure you'll hear updates maybe at a city council meeting or other methods. Second project, which is even more fresh, we received a call from State Parks last week, and they have an abundance of sand at Huntington State Beach. They have anywhere from 33 to 44,000 cubic yards of sand on the back beach, and it's blowing onto their multi-purpose trail at the back of the beach. So they contacted us knowing that we're looking for sand sources and restarting our scoop program. And they offered the sand to us, and much like the sand from the Santa Ana River, it's free. There's no cost to acquire it. However, we have to pay for the trucking costs and pay for the earth moving costs once the sand is delivered to San Clemente. So that project, we're going to be jointly preparing an application to Coastal Commission with State Parks. We're going to be co-leads on that with us. And we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers. They have a nationwide general permit, which we're hoping to be able to comply with, so we wouldn't have to run another permit gauntlet with the Army Corps of Engineers. And then we would also need a railroad right of entry easement from Southern California Regional Railroad Authority. That would again be delivered by truck, and the location for that is still being determined. So we're looking at a couple different locations in the city. Again, because it's coming by truck, we need direct access to the beach. And as Committee Member Schmidt pointed out, there are limited access points to the beach where trucks can drive right up and dump. So more on that project as well. I think that's my last slide, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Exciting, very exciting news. Yes, Susan?
Well, no, I know with State Parks, they have those trucks that they can go anywhere, you know. And so I don't know how big their trucks are, but I've been in many of their pickup trucks because I've done work for State Parks before. So it's not hard for them to get on the trail, so to speak, to put sand on the sand.
Yes, they're just not. They're willing to give us the sand and let us take it off their beach and use it in San Clemente.
No, but I'm talking about the San Clemente Parks. They may be willing to send up their trucks to get the sand.
It's actually the folks in San Clemente, Scott Kibbe and Riley Pratt, that we're working with that are offering the sand to coordinate it because it's within their district, but they're not willing to pay to have the trucks deliver it.
Oh, but they don't want to use their own trucks. Have you asked them if they want to use their own trucks?
Yes, they're at this point. I mean, we will probably still talk about the transport issue because they want to be co-partners with us. But at this point, they're saying the sand is free, but you have to come in, scoop it, and load it in trucks, and then deliver it to the beach.
Oh, okay.
Also, generally, the size of the truck is much bigger than a pickup truck.
Yeah, well, some of their trucks are bigger now. I thought they had one or two for things like that, but maybe not any longer.
Yeah, we're looking at trucks that are like 10 to 20 cubic yards, so pretty sizable trucks.
Yeah, that's very sizable.
Yeah, like what is it? A concrete thing is 15 cubic yards, right? A concrete mixer for sale.
The trucks you usually see is about 20 cubic yards is about the max they can get.
Yeah.
And that's a big truck.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Well, that's really exciting news. You always, last two meetings you've been there, you've always brought us some new surprises, and they're all positive. So
Yeah.
you've been working really, really hard, and it's great to hear that people are calling us saying, "Hey, you want some sand?" Right? But
Yes.
it still creates a lot of challenges logistically, like it always will when we're trying to bring in sand.
One quick question, just point of clarification on this. The June date on those, that's just approval of the scoop, right? The sand would then take X amount, given however much
Yes.
resources, money we could put into it, right?
Yes.
From the budget.
The Coastal Commission hearing is June 12th, 13th, and 14th. We're not sure where we are on the agenda yet. Hasn't been published. But the idea is that we would get the approval then, and then we have to perfect the permit and then be able to start moving the sand.
Figure out logistics with the sand.
And then one point of clarification, you mentioned that the previous permit had identified 5 areas totaling about a mile.
Four locations in the city.
So the scoop permit designates where we can put the sand?
Yes.
We can't put it anywhere.
We can't put it anywhere. It designates how much sand can go in any given area, and some of the areas previously, and we're doing a deeper dive into this to try to understand why it was limited to those 4 areas. But the idea is that you can't place sand in areas where there is like vegetated rocky reef in the near shore, because your sand could go onto the reef and smother the
And
resources.
so our approach with this new permit is looking at it how?
We are looking at it almost like a fresh start, but trying to use as much information as is already existing.
And not, but not limiting it to a mile
Correct.
or 5 miles?
No, correct. We've been asked to look at the entire length of the city as potential scoop candidate placement areas.
And then just like how these scoop things work. So say we have this Santa Ana River kind of approval, right? Is that like as easy as copy and pasting it next time they have excess sand and applying it to our beaches? Or
Yes.
is it like a full kind of rigmarole of going through, jumping through the hoops?
The idea with the scoop program is that you have all the permits in place so that once you find sand or someone calls you and says, hey, we have sand, you mobilize the team to deliver it to the city and then spread it.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
There's some pre-construction and post-construction monitoring, and you have to do what's called a project notification report every time you do a scoop project, but that's more of a formality.
Yeah, okay, clear.
Candace, any other questions?
I have a question. This is for John Dow. John, I remember that Susie said something at a city council meeting recently that she had somebody who had big trucks and would go get sand from one of the sources. Would you be willing to follow up with her and see what she was talking about, if they were talking about trucks as big as we need?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, with this kind of volume, we're talking hundreds, if not thousands of truckloads. So it's not like, can I borrow your truck kind of thing. So,
Well,
It's a
yeah,
pretty big deal.
she offered it, she
Yeah.
made,
okay.
went to the podium,
Right.
said she had these people.
It's certainly worth following up on. The idea is the bigger the truck, the fewer the truck trips
Yeah,
through the community, so
Yeah.
we want the biggest bang for the buck.
sure.
Okay, any other questions for Leslie? Thank you very, very much for your presentation.
One last question.
Yes.
So, and I heard you speak about this, that the sand grain, I think you were quoted in the OC Times, the sand grain we're getting right now from Surfside, right, is slightly bigger. Do we have those numbers, like of what the scoop, is that in the
Yes.
scoop permit of like the millimeter or 2 millimeter size?
Yes, we do have that information. I don't have it at my fingertips,
Yeah,
but
no, I don't want
it's
it.
slightly coarser grain. I want to say it's like 0.60 millimeters.
Okay.
So slightly bigger than the native grain size that we have on the beach here.
Coarser's better.
Coarser's better,
It takes
sticks
longer,
around.
yeah, it
Exactly.
takes longer to move.
Yes.
So, I understand.
And just FYI, I grabbed a bag of the sand that was being pumped up on the beach there and sent it off to our lab to have a grain size analysis done because I was just curious to see what it looked like. So
Citizens.
I'll share that. I'll share that.
I like
with you.
that.
Perfect.
Yeah, once a scientist, always a scientist.
Yes, Ryan.
So, okay, any other questions?
No, I'm done now.
Any
I'm
other-
sorry.
More questions? Okay.
Yeah,
No, I was just
All right, we're almost coming up on 6 o'clock, and we don't have a hard stop at 6, but it sure would be nice if we could stop at 6. So,
That's not what a chairperson should say.
well, he just said it. So, all right, you read.
All right.
I got a second.
Regarding our agenda, so we talked about the 2 options, and since you're not gonna know the timing yet, if you could have your presentation here, should we go ahead and at least make the offer to my friend in Oceanside, Jamie? Should I get a plan? Should I get a plan?
I think one of the things that we talked about was about potential presentations for next meeting. I mean, we have the potential for Jamie, I think you said.
Right.
Yeah, that's an option. And Zach basically said, we can coordinate it on our own. We just need to let them know before the meeting. Leslie is basically saying she might be in a position to have a presentation on the nature-based solutions on their next design and an update on the scoop status. So we have the potential of having a lot of different presentations here. Andy made a recommendation or an offer to present the presentation that he made to the Senate. I'd be interested in that. So I think we need to take all those things under advisement, and then if we can do that with Jamie, let's schedule it.
So do we have to like motion to create an open slot at the next meeting?
No, I think we just have it on. We've basically asked staff to look into those types of presentations. Obviously, we can't have 6 presentations. We'll never get out of here. So I think we need to kind of decide which ones would be available and which ones would be most effective for the.
It seems that it's the will of the committee to have an agenda item that's presentations from outside groups, and the chair would have some discretion to work on that specifics of that agenda item before we set the next agenda.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
does that need to be voted on? Or
Could you
no?
repeat that, please, Zach?
We basically need to provide Zach input on what presentations we would like before the next agenda.
Well, you're providing the public input that you plan to take up an agenda item on the next agenda, and then as the chair works with staff and as you all identify sources that can give presentations, we will post a public notice that provides the specifics of that.
Okay.
So if you'd like to make a motion now amongst yourselves of what you want to hear the most, we can work on that.
Well,
So in general, we always need to decide in a current meeting what we're going to include in the
In the
next meeting.
future, yep.
yes.
Really?
Is that what I heard?
That's why I.
Is that what I heard?
It's
Adam?
it can be a little more open-ended, right?
I mean, I understood that the Jamie presentation from Oceanside, we could arrange on our own, but, in terms of agendizing what we'd like to hear as potential presentations, do we need to make a motion on that, or just provide staff direction to try to
For
make
this,
that happen?
for this kind of committee, just general consensus from the committee as far as which presentations you'd like to hear next would be great. People aren't always available on certain dates, so we can coordinate that. The notice will publish that to the public certain events that are coming up, but for special presentations, there's no deliberation inherent in those presentations, and so it's not something that really requires public noticing. But to the extent that the committee can give staff direction on what they like to hear and what order, great. But we've got other committees where special presentations are identified by the chair halfway, between meetings, and they'll work with staff and we'll just put that on the agenda. So that's always an option as well.
So I think we've communicated to staff the types of presentations that seem like they're available that we would like to hear from. Maybe between now and the next meeting, we can decide what we would like to hear from, especially.
Or list the potential presentations we're interested in, and that would be kind of an either-or situation where whoever's available.
Yeah, well, we have 3 of
so
them,
we have some
right?
options.
Yeah, we have.
Well, don't we have to tell you right now who we'd like to listen to, and if they can if they can't make it on that meeting, we would know that well in advance to schedule it to a following meeting.
I think we just have the motion to have special presentations, right?
Yeah, I think the committee has provided some direction on speakers you'd like to hear from.
Andy's presentation in the Senate, Jamie from Oceanside, you even mentioned Zach potentially providing an overview on another coastal commission permits that involve hard structures in California. We've heard that Leslie is saying that there will likely, potentially, not guaranteed, but just the potential that we're going to have a nature-based solutions update as well as a scoop status update. So it sounds like there's a lot of presentations
Potential presentations.
that are available. So I would just say we would like to hear those, and that would be our instruction to staff to try and provide those presentations to us in the next meeting,
So,
based on availability.
my question is, so do we, if John is calling Jamie, for example, John here is calling Jamie to just to find out what her schedule's like, and then he calls you and lets you know she's available in this month or this month.
Yeah, you can follow up with me or with the chair. The chair is also involved in agenda setting.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Okay. All right. Moving on to item 7, items from the committee members. I had basically notes on that to basically talk about presentations, recommendations of staff on presentations that I think would be helpful for us. So, are there any other items from the committee members that we'd like staff to know?
Can we motion to request a time limit for subcommittee presentations to like a 10-minute max, right? So motion to make that the standard of presentation so that we don't have two of subcommittees.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to do a motion on that or
Or
just
come to an agreement that 10
10
minutes is a good
future
presentation.
subcommittee presentations be limited to 10 minutes or something a little bit shorter. I think we can just take that under general advisement.
So yeah, that was my only
All
point
right.
because these things can balloon
Yes,
right over
yes,
the 10-minute thing,
absolutely.
and without a time limit.
Right.
Well, I've got a question on that to staff, to Zach or to Mr. Atanium. What would the policy be? If here we are working with different programs and Rhine water quality, and so if I have meetings with people and I get the information now and it takes me 12 minutes rather than 10 minutes, what?
Yeah, I think we can work
We
it
said
out.
there's
I
a
think we can
goal,
work
just
it
sort of
out.
keeping in mind to keep it
Yeah, it's-
concise.
It's the reach goal to keep concise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can work.
Okay,
I
well,
think we
that's
can
different
work
than
that
what you
out.
said, thank
I think
you.
we can work it out. Yeah.
All right.
So I appreciate that. All right. Well, with no further discussion, I'll take a motion to.
Sorry, one more last thing. Sorry, I know I'm just the ruiner of days. Leah is the happy person in this room. Can we make a suggestion to City Council to focus their dog beach on North Beach and not the entire can we
Why on North?
because the other option is
No,
far
no,
too large.
Yeah.
like if they're going to go through this pilot program, it makes sense to limit that beach.
I would actually prefer to make a recommendation to the city council that we don't have it this year at all, that we don't even consider it.
Yes.
I'm okay with that too. But I wanted us to come to city council with a recommendation from the water quality subcommittee, right? That they should take that under consideration, right? Because that's part of our job as or our committee member or something, right? Like, is that something we're supposed to do?
You might want to add an agenda item to your next meeting, and we could have Nikki give a little bit of a rundown, or you could do some independent research before the next meeting on that topic before you decide to make a formal
Yeah,
recommendation.
I would definitely like to have some more information on that.
What was the request? Could you repeat that?
Just to not allow dogs on the beach. recommend that the dog park, beach park
Well,
is probably
I don't know. I mean, it seems like the city council is pretty interested in moving ahead with that, or
and it's our job as
in one location. maybe.
coastal advisory committee members.
So,
right?
this is a great example of why certain items are on the agenda. Those are the items that you're allowed to deliberate on. Some questions and a little bit of discussion are fine. If we're getting into this level of detail about a potential item, then we should definitely be
Put it on
agendizing
the
it
agenda.
for the next meeting
For the
and discussing
public,
it. It sounds like the concern is about water quality,
Yeah.
so that would be part of the work plan. That would fall under that work plan project. If there are other issues that the committee would like to make recommendations on to the city council, I would recommend that you talk to staff about those, just to confirm that they're within the work plan.
Okay.
And then if not, we can talk with our council liaisons to figure out how best to address those.
Question, so what if, I think this will be getting to the city council probably within 2 months. So I guess what I'm saying is if that does happen, or if I know it's gonna be on the agenda, I can send a note or ask the staff to send a note, or maybe Miley to send a note to everybody to let you know it's on the agenda, and you can singularly, as a private citizen, stand up for no dogs on the beach.
Yeah.
Because
reach
we
out.
would be running, we would have run out of time if it's already on the agenda. So I would.
If it's on the city council agenda, the committee has the option of speaking as members of the public.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, okay, that much.
but you can also, I'm sorry, Mr. Artemian, one more question. You can also, in that situation, if you, like, for example, if I sit on the Coastal Advisory Committee, I can say I'm a resident, I'm also a member of the Coastal Advisory Committee, but I did not get any permission from anybody to give a ruling from them. That is why I'm speaking as a private resident, because we don't meet till every other week, other month.
Absolutely. The intention here is that you don't misconstrue your statements as a resident to represent the committee as a whole.
Yes,
Without the committee's collective decision to transmit that information.
that's right. But if you do indicate that you are in the Coastal Advisory Committee, obviously we're thinking about this because of water, quality of water and public safety as well. And so I think that the city council would at least listen to a notch up with people who are already dealing with this subject. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. With that, I will accept a motion for adjournment. Do I have a,
But wait, did we put that on the agenda?
Well,
I
it
believe
sounds-
it, we just suggested it to
It sounds like we're
staff.
gonna miss the boat, right?
Well, I'm not sure. We
Okay.
should still put it on.
Well, it's the same concept we just discussed. If it's the will of the committee, and this was brought up essentially during item 7, items from committee members, that we consider this a future agenda, and then if the chair participates in the next agenda setting, we can add this as a future agenda item.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, great, thank you.
So I have a motion.
A motion to adjourn.
Okay, do I have a second? All right, well, in all favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and just before I hit the gavel here, our next meeting will be on Thursday, July the 18th at 4 p.m. right here in the third chamber. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, it's good to have you here.
Yeah, good to be here.